According to poet and librarian Philip Larkin, sexual intercourse began in 1963, which was rather late for me. We can date the origin of the midlife crisis with the same precision. In 1965, psychoanalyst Elliot Jacques published the essay that coined the phrase, "Death and the Midlife Crisis." In dissecting the crisis, Jacques quotes a patient in his mid-30s. "Up till now," he said, "life has seemed an endless upward slope with nothing but the distant horizon in view. Now suddenly I seem to have reached the crest of the hill, and there stretching ahead is the downward slope with the end of the road in sight, far enough away, it's true, but there is death observably present at the end." If you are listening to this book, the odds are good that you relate to this moment. You know how you are supposed to feel, whether you feel that way or not. You have lived long enough to ask, is that all there is? Enough to have made some serious mistakes, to look back on triumphs and failures with pride and regret, to look sideways at lost alternatives, lives you did not choose and cannot live, and to look ahead to the end of life, not imminent, but not so far off, its distance measured in units you now comprehend. Another 40 years, with luck. You are not the first. We have contemporary models, like Lester Burnham in American Beauty, who quits his job, buys a fast car, and lusts after his teenage daughter's seductive friend. But there are much earlier ones. A partial history would cite the protagonist of John Williams' luminous 1965 novel, Stoner, who, at 42 years old, with a failed marriage and stalled career, could see nothing before him that he wished to enjoy, and little behind him that he cared to remember. No wonder he embarks on the prescribed affair. It would cite the absurd man of Albert Camus' 1942 Myth of Sisyphus, whose existential crisis is not timeless, but comes when a man notices or says that he is 30. He admits that he stands at a certain point on a curve that he acknowledges having to travel to its end. He belongs to time, and by the horror that seizes him, he recognizes his worst enemy. Tomorrow. He was longing for tomorrow, whereas everything in him ought to reject it. That revolt of the flesh is the absurd. And it would cite The History of Mr. Polly by H.G. Wells, the darkly comic story of a bored shopkeeper whose abortive attempt at suicide makes him a local hero. He is credited with putting out the fire he started and spurs him to begin life anew. The book was published in 1910. If representations of the midlife crisis precede its naming in 1965, how far can we trace the thing itself? It comes as a surprise to learn that Jacques' examples are largely drawn not from his clinical practice, but from the lives of creative artists. He was struck by the frequency with which the age of 37 or thereabouts brings either creative silence or transformation.